After relinquishing my seat as the billionaire's wife to a penniless university student, my former mother-in-law compensated me with 50 billion euros and promptly shipped me off to Eastern Europe. During those years in Eastern Europe, I opened a small flower shop in a quaint seaside town. I found a new social circle, fell in love with a new boyfriend, and was on the verge of getting married and starting a family. Then one day, the door to my flower shop burst open. An old friend stood there, her face a mask of shock as she blurted, "You're still alive? Why didn't you go back to London to find Aaron Britton? Do you have any idea how frantically he's been searching for you all these years?" I simply offered a faint smile, holding up the ring on my finger. "But I'm already married and have a child." The words hung in the air, instantly chilling the atmosphere to an unsettling silence. At my friend's urgent, silent prompting, I turned my head. Aaron Britton stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his noble, frosty eyes fixed on me. But my mind drifted back to our third year of marriage, when Aaron confessed he'd fallen for a university student named Alice. He asked for a divorce, offering to leave with nothing. I cried, I raged, I even begged him, casting aside all my dignity. Yet Aaron merely looked at me with cold indifference. "Maura, I'm sorry, but I don't love you anymore." I ran to Alice's university like a madwoman, creating a scene that solidified her reputation as the other woman. Alice, in turn, hated me enough to run me over with her car. Lying in a pool of my own blood, my first thought was to send Alice to jail. But Aaron rushed back that very night, kneeling by my hospital bed, pleading, "Maura, please let her go. She's so young. I won't divorce you. I'll come back to the family. I'll make it up to you, I promise." In that moment, watching him beg so humbly for another woman, I felt my heart twist into a knot of agony for the first time. But I loved him too much, loved him enough to agree to his terms. For the next 3 years, Aaron indeed cut all ties with Alice. Everyone said he'd turned over a new leaf. He came home punctually every day, remembered all my preferences, brewed me ginger tea during my period, and held me tight when I had nightmares. But once, while we were dining at a restaurant, he got into a furious brawl defending a harassed waitress. The moment I recognized her face, a chill colder than ice spread through me. He pulled a business card from his inner pocket and handed it to Alice, his voice low. "Go see this person. He'll arrange a decent, easy job for you." Alice suddenly looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, and knocked the card to the floor. "I don't want any of this. What I want, what I've always wanted, is just you. Aaron Britton, only you." Alice's tears streamed down her face. "For 3 years, I thought about you every single night, unable to sleep. I secretly went to our old dating spots and just sat there all day long. Aaron, why can't we be together when we clearly love each other?" Her sobs were heart-wrenching. Aaron looked at her anguished face, his eyes swirling with profound pain and struggle. "How do you think I feel? But only by returning to my family could I protect you. Alice, please listen." He turned to leave, but Alice suddenly lunged at him from behind, kissing him fiercely, heedless of their surroundings. Hidden behind a planter, I watched, transfixed, as Aaron's Adam's apple bobbed, making a final, desperate struggle. Then, he cupped the back of her head with one hand and passionately, fiercely, returned her kiss. I stood there, my blood seeming to freeze in my veins. I thought my heart had died 3 years ago, that it couldn't ache anymore. But I was wrong. A dead heart could still be tormented. Now, seeing the undisguised passion and adoration in his eyes, I suddenly felt like those 3 years of steadfastness had been a colossal joke. I couldn't bear to watch any longer. I turned and stumbled towards the elevator. A large hand suddenly reached out from the side, clamping over my mouth. It was the drunk man Aaron had beaten. "That was your man, wasn't it? He beat me up, so I'm going to make you pay." Thump. A heavy punch landed on my abdomen, followed by a rain of fists and slaps on my body and face. My consciousness slowly blurred, and I finally collapsed onto the floor like a broken rag doll. Just as I thought I was going to die there, Passers-by rushed in and saved me. The doctor's expression was grim after the examination. Multiple contusions, possibly fractured ribs. We need a family member's signature. The nurse in charge dialed the top contact on my phone. It rang for a long time before being answered. The other end was quiet, then came a series of sounds that made my cheeks flush. A few seconds later, Aaron's voice, feigning calmness, came through the phone. "Hello, Maura. I'm sorry, the company has an urgent overseas video conference. Drive home safely yourself. I'll be back once I'm done." He didn't even wait for my reply before hastily hanging up. Lying in the hospital bed, I forced a smile that was uglier than any cry, my voice hoarse and broken. "I don't have family. I'll sign myself." With a final stroke, my vision completely blackened, and I passed out. When I awoke again, I was in a hospital room permeated with the smell of disinfectant. A familiar, concerned voice spoke by my bedside. "Maura, you're awake. How do you feel? Does it still hurt?" Looking at his face so close to mine, at the distinct dark red mark visible on his neck, I felt a wave of nausea. Seeing no response from me, he took my hand, his eyes sincere. "Don't worry. I've dealt with the man who hit you. No one who harms my Maura gets away with it." I looked at Aaron, this man I had loved for over a decade, who was now so unfamiliar that he chilled me to the bone. Some mistakes, once crossed, should have been corrected completely. Now I finally understood that some hearts, once they fly away, can never truly return. I slowly withdrew my hand, masking the surging pain and deadness in my eyes, and then nodded gently. Aaron immediately let out a sigh of relief. He thought I had, as always, chosen forgiveness and endurance. After being discharged, I returned to the villa, opened the safe, and took out a yellowed divorce agreement. Aaron's signature, made 3 years ago, was in the bottom right corner of the paper. At the time, he had said, "Sign it, Maura. Let's part amicably." I had torn the agreement to shreds like a madwoman, throwing it in his face, crying, "Aaron, I'd die before I'd sign this." Now, looking at this agreement, which I had carefully pieced back together and preserved, I felt nothing but profound irony. With each stroke, I wrote my own name. Once done, I took a picture of the signed agreement and sent it to my lawyer. "Attorney Miller, please expedite my divorce proceedings. All terms as per the agreement, the sooner the better." After sending the message, I started packing. It turned out that living in one place for so long, leaving only required one night. Aaron didn't return until the next evening. He carried an exquisite gift bag, a gentle smile on his face. "Maura, look what I brought you. The limited edition bracelet from your favorite brand. I had someone bring it back from abroad." He walked in and saw me sitting by the window, lost in thought. "You must have been bored from being in the hospital for a few days. There's a business gala tonight. It's a good chance to get some fresh air." I didn't take the gift, just raised my eyes to look at him. Only then did Aaron notice my suitcase by the wall. "What's this?" "Just tidying up some old things. Planning to donate them." I explained calmly, then stood up. The gala was held in the ballroom of a 5-star hotel. When Aaron walked in with my hand in his, he attracted many glances. He introduced me to several important partners, behaving thoughtfully, chatting and laughing, giving the impression of a deeply loving couple. I smiled and nodded cooperatively, but my heart was utterly cold. Until a server carrying a tray of drinks approached. It was Alice. Suddenly, without warning, the crystal chandelier overhead detached and plummeted towards Aaron. In a flash, Alice, standing nearby, threw herself forward with all her might, pushing Aaron violently aside as if her life depended on it. Crash. The massive chandelier smashed down, landing squarely on Alice. She fell into a pool of blood, instantly losing consciousness. "Alice." Aaron's eyes widened with horror, and he lunged forward, kneeling beside Alice like a madman. He suddenly looked up, his bloodshot eyes roaring. "Call an ambulance now." He scooped up the blood-soaked Alice and rushed out, heedless of everything. In his panic and urgency, he even bumped into me, who was standing in his way. I staggered from the impact, hitting my forehead hard against a cold Roman pillar beside me. Sharp pain shot through me, and warm liquid trickled down my temple. I clung to the pillar, barely steadying myself, and when I raised a hand to touch my forehead, it came away scarlet. Aaron, meanwhile, cradling Alice, had vanished from the ballroom like a gust of wind, never once looking back at me. The surroundings were chaos, gasps, murmurs. Someone came over to ask if I was all right, but I felt as if I couldn't hear anything. Clutching my bleeding forehead, I stumbled out of the chaotic ballroom. I didn't go to the hospital, but found a nearby clinic for simple disinfection and a bandage. Back home, the villa was empty and still cold. I washed the blood from my face and sat on the sofa, opening my phone. The top trending video in the city was of Aaron. The video was filmed at the renowned St. Michael's Cathedral on the city outskirts, known for its 999 steep stone steps. It was said that a truly devout person, climbing the steps on their knees, would find their prayers for safety answered most effectively. In the video, Aaron had shed his blood-stained designer suit, wearing only a thin shirt. His expression was solemn, his gaze resolute, as he arduously climbed towards the cathedral at the summit, one step, one kneel, one bow at a time. A reporter nearby held a microphone asking, "Mr. Britton, who are you praying for? Is it for your family?" Aaron looked into the camera, his eyes tender and firm. "For the person I love most, praying for her safety. The person I love most." I slammed my phone shut, but the suffocating pain in my chest refused to subside. In the following days, Aaron never returned. Until one day, as I stepped out to throw away the trash, 2 police officers approached me. "Are you Ms. Maura Thorne? We've received a report from Ms. Alice Davies, accusing you of hiring someone to assault her, specifically instructing them to throw acid on her. We need you to come with us to assist with the investigation." My pupils constricted. I couldn't believe it. I hired someone to throw acid on her? Just then, Aaron walked over. Hearing the police's words, his face instantly changed. There must be a mistake, right? My wife couldn't possibly do something like that. The police officer's expression was serious. "We have preliminary evidence, the suspect's confession and relevant transfer records." He handed a document to Aaron. Aaron took it, flipping through it quickly. The more he read, the darker his face grew, the colder his eyes became. Finally, he slammed the document onto me, the papers scattering across the floor. "Maura Thorne, tell me, what is this?" I looked down at the papers on the floor, which contained blurry screenshots of bank transfers and a handwritten confession. It stated that a woman named Thorne had instructed him to throw acid on Alice. Before I could explain, Aaron's voice was icy and resolute. "Take her. Handle it as you see fit." Then, he didn't spare me another glance, turning and quickly walking away. He was rushing to see Alice. I spent an entire night in the cold detention center. The next morning, the police informed me that Alice had agreed to a settlement. I signed the papers and walked out of the detention center. Just as I was about to hail a taxi home, someone from behind covered my mouth and nose with a towel. When I regained consciousness, I felt myself stuffed inside a sack, my mouth gagged with a cloth, my hands and feet tightly bound. Faint voices reached my ears. It was Aaron and Alice. "Aaron, do we really have to do this to her? Isn't it too much? She's still your wife, after all." Aaron's voice was icy. "Too much? Did she think it was too much when she hired someone to throw acid on you? You've undergone 3 skin graft surgeries, enduring unimaginable pain. I'll use my own methods to give her a lesson she'll never forget." Lying in the sack, my blood seemed to freeze instantly. It was Aaron. He was the one who had me kidnapped, all to avenge Alice. The man I loved most, my husband of 7 years, was doing this to me for another woman. Then I felt the mouth of the sack tighten. Something heavy was then forced inside, pressing down on me. It was rocks. I struggled wildly, trying to scream, but only muffled whimpers escaped. The sack was roughly lifted, and with a splash, I was thrown into the icy cold river. The river water instantly surged in from all directions, submerging my mouth and nose, filling my lungs. Suffocation, cold, despair. I thrashed desperately in the sack, but my hands and feet were bound, and the rocks dragged me down to the bottom. Just when I thought I was certainly going to die, the sack was suddenly pulled out of the water. I choked, greedily gasping for the freezing air. But a few seconds later, I was forced back under. This was repeated over and over. Pulled up, pushed down, pulled up, pushed down, a cruel game of cat and mouse. In the fear of imminent death and the extreme cold and pain, countless images flooded my mind uncontrollably. 16 years old, a blushing boy handing me a love letter under a cherry tree, clumsy handwriting, burning sincerity. 18 years old, at the departure gate of an international airport, he hugged me tightly. Mora, wait for me to come back. I'll definitely marry you. 22 years old, his first attempt at cooking for me. 25 years old, at our wedding, the tears glinting in his eyes as he lifted my veil. Those beautiful, sincere affections and promises I thought would last a lifetime. It turned out they were all lies. Or perhaps they were once true, but later given to someone else. And I, like a fool, clung to the phantom of the past, unwilling to let go. The next time I was pulled out of the water, I finally couldn't hold on any longer, and I coughed up a large mouthful of blood mixed with river water. Before my consciousness completely faded, I thought I heard Aaron's cold voice from the bank. That's enough. Throw her ashore and let her fend for herself. I don't know how long I lay on the riverbank until a faint glimmer of dawn light stung my eyes. I struggled, using my last ounce of strength to open my phone. The screen lit up, and 2 unread messages popped up. The first was from Aaron. Mora, since I chose to return to the family, I won't do anything to betray you again. Please stop hurting Alice. She almost had her face ruined this time, and her mental state is very fragile. I'll stay with her for a few days, and then come back to you. The second was from my lawyer. Miss Thorne, all divorce procedures have been completed. Your divorce certificate has been sent to your home by express delivery. I wish you all the best for your future. I looked at these 2 messages and suddenly laughed. I laughed so hard I coughed up more blood, laughed until tears streamed down my face. I blacklisted Aaron's number without hesitation. Then, supporting my bruised and battered body, I shakily stood up. Every step felt like treading on knife blades, and the fractured part of my leg sent excruciating pain shooting through me. But I just bit my lip, moving forward with difficulty, one step at a time. Returning to that cold, empty villa, on the living room coffee table, there was indeed an express delivery envelope. I tore it open, and inside were 2 dark red divorce certificates. I picked up the one belonging to me and opened it. In the photo, I was wearing the white shirt from our wedding, smiling gently and serenely. I did not pick up Aaron's. I gently placed the blank divorce certificate in the most conspicuous spot on the coffee table. Then, I turned and picked up the suitcase I had already packed. I took one last look at this place I had lived in for 7 years, loved for 7 years, and dragged myself through for 7 years. No lingering attachment, no looking back. I opened the door and walked out. Aaron stayed with Alice for 3 whole days. For those 3 days, they barely left the hotel room. From the living room to the bedroom, from the bathroom to the balcony, every corner bore the marks of their frantic engagement. Alice's youthful, vibrant body seemed to possess a magic that effortlessly ignited the long-suppressed desire within him. He was like an insatiable beast, wanting only to confirm this rediscovered passion, to confirm that he had truly shed the shackles of marriage and come back to life in the most primal way possible. It wasn't until the afternoon of the 3rd day that he, bearing the exhaustion and satiation of his indulgence, drove back to the villa. He entered the code and pushed open the heavy, carved door. A silence, too profound, almost chilling, greeted him. Aaron stood in the entryway, a slight frown creasing his brow. Before, no matter how late he returned, the living room always had a warm yellow floor lamp lit. The air might carry the aroma of her stew, or the faint scent of fresh flowers she'd arranged in a vase, or perhaps just the soft rustle of pages as she quietly read on the sofa. But now there was nothing. Aaron took off his jacket, tossing it casually onto the sofa, his gaze sweeping over the room. Suddenly it stopped. In the center of the living room, on the expensive Italian marble coffee table, lay a solitary, dark red booklet. A strange tightness gripped his chest. He strode over quickly. Picking it up, the 3 gold-embossed words on the cover pierced his eyes. Divorce certificate. He froze for 2 seconds, his fingers somewhat stiff as he flipped it open. This meant she had signed. A wave of wild elation rushed through him, unexpected and overwhelming. His heart hammered violently in his chest, making his ears ring. Signed. She finally signed. The invisible shackles of the past 3 years, the suffocating cage of marriage, were finally, completely broken. He didn't even pause to consider when she had signed, or when she had left. A tremendous sense of liberation washed over him. He almost immediately pulled out his phone, his fingertips trembling slightly with excitement, and dialed Alice's number. The call was answered almost instantly. Aaron. Alice's voice was laced with the lazy affection of someone just waking up. Alice. Aaron's voice was uncontrollably exhilarated, almost a gasp. She signed it. The divorce certificate is in my hand. She finally signed. We're free. We're completely free. A moment of silence on the other end, then a burst of surprised, tearful shouts. Really? Aaron? Is this true? Can we really be together? No one can stop us anymore. Yes. Absolutely true. Aaron paced excitedly in the empty living room, his leather shoes echoing crisply on the polished floor. As soon as I sort out a few small things here, I'll come get you. Alice. We'll never be apart again. I'm going to give you a grand wedding and make you the most radiant bride. Alice, on the other end, was weeping tears of joy, rambling incoherently about her longing and ecstasy. Aaron held his phone, her excited sobs in his ear, the divorce certificate symbol of freedom in his sight. He felt a lightness and satisfaction he'd never known before. He no longer had to force a smile for Maura's increasingly cold face. He no longer had to wake up in the middle of the night, looking at the sleeping but now estranged wife beside him, feeling an endless void and guilt. He no longer had to bear the chains of morality, struggling agonizingly between true love and responsibility. He was free. Completely, utterly free. Hanging up the phone, his heart was still pounding. Looking around the villa he had lived in for 7 years, he realized for the first time how spacious, how pleasing it seemed. He walked to the liquor cabinet, poured himself a shot of whiskey, and tossed it back. The fiery liquid slid down his throat, igniting the flame of new beginnings in his chest. He pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant, his voice lighter than ever. Assistantly, it's me. Do me a favor. Contact the best interior designer. I want to renovate this entire house, inside and out, every single thing. Yes, everything. Arrange it as soon as possible. Hanging up, he leaned back in the chair and let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, he could start a brand new life, one that belonged solely to him and Alice. That evening, Alice was brought to the villa. She wore a white dress, fluttering into his arms like a light butterfly. Looking up, her eyes filled with starlight and tears. Aaron, this isn't a dream, is it? Can I really live here now? Is this our home from now on? It's our home, Aaron said, lowering his head to kiss the top of her hair, pulling her into a tight embrace. From now on, it's just you and me here. Alice excitedly ran around the villa, touching this, looking at that. Seeing the huge king-size bed in the master bedroom, she blushed, then wrinkled her nose. Aaron, this bed. You used to sleep on it with her, right? I don't want to sleep on this bed. It smells like another woman. Can we replace it? And these curtains, this vanity, this wardrobe. I don't like any of it. I want everything brand new. All right, whatever you want. Aaron chuckled indulgently. I'll have the designer come tomorrow. You can have it however you like. We'll throw away everything you don't like. Aaron, you're so good to me. Alice jumped up, wrapping her arms around his neck, and kissed him passionately. Desire quickly ignited. They tumbled onto the king-size bed that once belonged to Aaron and Mora, eagerly tearing at each other's clothes. Aaron gasped, forcefully possessing the body that had haunted his dreams, celebrating this long-delayed union in the most intense way. In a haze of passion, he opened his eyes and saw Alice's flushed, mesmerized face, alluring and beautiful. But his gaze inadvertently swept across the familiar chandeliers overhead and the bedside lamp next to it, which Mora had painstakingly chosen. This very mattress was custom-made by Mora, who said it was good for the back. She always liked to keep a soft pillow on her side of the bed, leaning against it to read before sleep. These trivial, seemingly meaningless details, in this moment, suddenly crashed into his mind with startling clarity. Aaron's movements paused almost imperceptibly. "Aaron," Alice murmured in dissatisfaction, wrapping her arm around his neck and pulling him closer. Aaron closed his eyes, shaking off those ill-timed thoughts, and moved with renewed intensity, as if to use this lovemaking to completely erase all traces of the past 7 years. Alice officially moved in. On the first morning after she moved in, Aaron woke up at his usual biological clock, just as he had for the past few years. He quietly got up, washed, changed into his workout clothes, and prepared to go to the gym. Passing through the living room, his gaze habitually fell on the large celadone vase in the corner. It was Mora's prized possession. The fresh flowers in it had to have their water changed daily and be regularly trimmed. She always said that fresh flowers had life and needed meticulous care. He paused, and to the empty living room, he spoke quite naturally. "Mora, the lilies in the vase need fresh water. The petals are looking a bit wilted." His voice trailed off mid-sentence. The air was so quiet he could hear his own breathing. Aaron stood there, stunned for a few seconds. Then, he pursed his lips and turned towards the gym, his steps quicker than usual. After his workout and a shower, he habitually walked into the kitchen, wondering what was for breakfast. The kitchen was cold and empty. Nothing. He then remembered that Alice was still asleep. He walked to the dining room, and the table was also bare. There was no warm congee or simple dishes kept hot in a pot, no freshly squeezed juice, no perfectly fried eggs and bacon. Before, no matter how early or late he woke up, Mora would always have breakfast ready, varied and nutritionally balanced. If he was in a hurry to leave, she would pack it in an exquisite lunchbox, reminding him to eat it. Aaron poured himself a glass of ice water and drank it in one gulp. The cold liquid slid into his stomach, bringing a brief moment of clarity, but also stirring a faint discomfort in his gut. His stomach issues were an old problem. He frowned, saying nothing. It wasn't until past 10 in the morning that Alice, still sleepy-eyed, came downstairs. She wore a silk robe, her long hair slightly messy, but her bare face was still youthful and radiant. Yawning, she walked over, embracing Aaron from behind as he read the financial news. She whined playfully, "Aaron, I'm hungry. Shall we go out to eat? I heard a new French restaurant opened downtown and the chef has 3 Michelin stars. I want to try it." Aaron put down his tablet and turned to look at her. Her face held the lazy blush of just waking up, her eyes bright and full of anticipation. He nodded. "All right, go get dressed." Alice cheered and ran upstairs. Half an hour later, she came down, impeccably made up, wearing the latest Chanel suit, carrying a Hermes bag, exuding the expensive scent of perfume. She was beautiful, young, and dazzling. Looking at such a radiant Alice, a different image inexplicably flashed through Aaron's mind, someone always in comfortable loungewear, with a bare face, busy in the kitchen, her scent a faint, warm aroma of food, not the fragrance of any designer perfume. He shook his head and picked up his car keys. "Let's go." Aaron barely tasted his French meal. The gnawing pain in his stomach intensified, twisting like an invisible hand. Fine beads of cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his face gradually turned pale. But Alice, sitting across from him, was preoccupied with taking photos of the exquisite foie gras and truffle soup before her. She changed angles multiple times, adjusted filters, and meticulously crafted her social media caption. Without looking up, she asked, "Aaron, don't you think the lighting is a bit dim in this one? Should I increase the exposure?" Aaron's hand tightened on his water glass, his knuckles white. He took a deep breath, his voice slightly strained. "Alice, I'm not feeling well. Let's go home early." "Oh." Alice finally looked up, seeing his pale face, and paused. "What's wrong? Stomach pain again? Well, drink some hot water then." She said it airily, her gaze quickly returning to her phone screen, her fingers typing rapidly, a satisfied smile on her lips. Aaron watched her, the subtle sense of unease in his heart spreading like ink dropped into clear water. A few days later, there was an important business gala. Aaron brought Alice. She was incredibly excited, dressed in a haute couture gown, adorned with a full set of jewelry, like a peacock displaying its feathers. But as soon as they entered, she showed her inexperience. She didn't know who to mingle with, couldn't understand industry jargon, and almost spilled wine on someone while toasting. When someone politely asked for her opinion on a certain project, she stammered, unable to answer, her face flushing crimson. Aaron rescued her, advising her privately, "In these situations, it's best to listen more and speak less." Alice pouted indignantly. "Those people just look down on me, trying to trip me up. What a boring party. I'd rather go shopping." Aaron rubbed his temples, saying nothing. He suddenly remembered how, in such settings, Mora always quietly stayed by his side, elegant and poised, conversing gracefully. When necessary, she could even handle some small talk for him, never causing him embarrassment. Back then, he had taken it for granted. Now a hollow ache bloomed somewhere in his chest, sharper than his stomach pain. After Alice moved into the villa, she gradually changed. She started checking Aaron's phone, scrutinizing his schedule. If any female name appeared, she would interrogate him for ages. Aaron would explain they were clients, business partners, but she wouldn't believe him. She'd cry and wail, "You had a history. How do I know you're not still lying to me now?" Once, Aaron was in his study on a video conference with an important female client, discussing a multi-million-euro merger. Alice suddenly burst in, disheveled, and pointed at the female client on the screen, yelling, "Shameless homewrecker. Trying to seduce someone else's husband." On the other end of the video call, the client's face instantly turned ashen. Aaron shot up, his head buzzing. He grabbed Alice, his voice sharp and furious. "Are you out of your mind? This is Ms. Lee. We're discussing business." "What business?" A man and a woman on a video call together is always problematic. Alice struggled, crying out, "Aaron Britton, you're deceiving me again." Aaron looked at her hysterical face. The innocent vulnerability he once found so endearing was now nothing but crude belligerence and distortion. A surge of anger rocketed to his head. He couldn't suppress it any longer. Pointing at the door, his voice was as cold as ice. "Get out." Alice froze, staring at him in disbelief. "I said, get out." Aaron suddenly raised his voice, a vein throbbing in his temple. "Now, immediately." Alice let out a wail, slammed the door, and ran out. The study was deathly silent. The other party had already hung up the video call. Aaron slumped back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Exhaustion seeped from his bones. That assailant was her distant cousin. The money transferred into his account ultimately flowed back into hers. Even the initial persona of a penniless, hard-working, self-reliant university student was meticulously fabricated. Aaron slammed the folder onto the desk, the loud crash echoing in the empty office. His chest heaved violently, his eyes bloodshot. It wasn't anger. It was a deeper, almost absurd, coldness. It turned out that for 3 years, the true love he thought he was sacrificing his marriage for, the true love he felt guilty and conflicted about, even committing unforgivable acts against Mora for, was, from beginning to end, a meticulously planned deception. He had been played for a fool. That night, the most intense argument yet erupted in the villa. Aaron threw the documents in front of Alice. Alice initially tried to argue, crying that someone was framing her. But as Aaron presented each piece of evidence, her expression gradually shifted from indignation to panic and finally, a cold, defiant sneer. Yes, I planned it all. So what? She tilted her chin, her face still streaked with tears, but her eyes sharp. Aaron Britton, don't try to act so innocent. If you hadn't been craving something new and had feelings for me, could I have manipulated you? You were the one who betrayed your marriage first. You deserved it. Get out. Aaron looked at her, his eyes devoid of any warmth. Take your things and disappear immediately. You're kicking me out? Aaron Britton, think carefully. I gave you so much of my youth. You also almost killed your wife, and you tacitly allowed those things to happen. If I were to go around talking, you can try. Aaron cut her off, his voice terrifyingly calm. Let's see if you're ruined first, or if I make it impossible for your entire family to stay in this city. Alice was terrified by the ruthlessness in his eyes. She opened her mouth, but didn't dare speak further. Ultimately, she packed her belongings and left, tail between her legs. The villa was empty again. Emptier and colder than when Maura had left. Aaron began searching for Maura. He used every connection he had, checking flight records, immigration data, and bank statements. But she had vanished like a drop of water evaporating, leaving no trace. She hadn't used the supplementary credit card he'd given her, hadn't contacted any old friends, and hadn't even taken anything valuable from the villa. She only took the old suitcase she had arrived with. It turned out that when a person was determined to disappear, they could do so completely. Months later, a vague lead pointed to France. Someone at a small gallery opening thought they'd seen an Asian woman with a side profile remarkably similar to hers. Aaron immediately flew over. After many days of inquiries in Paris, he finally found her name at a renowned art academy. Maura Thorne, registered as a short-term student, specializing in Western art history and contemporary art practice. He went to the address she provided, a quiet old street lined with apartment buildings, one of which had a small courtyard. He stood across the street and watched her emerge from the building. She wore a simple beige knit sweater and linen trousers, her hair a bit shorter, loosely tucked behind her ears. In her arms, she carried several thick art books and a canvas bag, and she wore thin-rimmed glasses. The sunlight fell on her, and she squinted slightly, her expression peaceful, even holding a faint, focused smile. She was with several other young people who looked like students, some Asian, some Western. They walked along, discussing something, and she occasionally nodded, speaking a few quiet words in French, her pronunciation not perfect, but clear. There was no gloom, no sorrow, none of the deadness and numbness that had marked her in his last memories. She seemed to have shed a heavy shell, her entire being imbued with a calm, uplifting energy. That energy was utterly at odds with the agitation, emptiness, and regret that clung to Aaron. Aaron's heart felt as if something had violently seized it, a dull ache reverberating through him. He watched her enter a coffee shop on the corner, sitting by the window with her classmates, spreading out art books and continuing their discussion. As she leaned down to sketch quickly with a pencil on paper, the lines of her profile were soft, her eyes bright. That was the sparkle of Maura he hadn't seen in a very, very long time. He had lost her. This realization, now with the force of 1,000 tons, struck him, rattling his very core. Aaron waited for a long time outside that coffee shop. It wasn't until her classmates gradually left that she packed up her things and walked out alone. Maura. He stepped forward, his voice dry and hoarse. Maura stopped, looking up. Seeing him, the hint of easy smiles on her face vanished instantly, her eyes calm and unwavering, as if looking at a stranger. "Mr. Britton," she said, nodding politely and distantly, and began to walk around him. "Maura, let's talk." Aaron blocked her path, his voice urgent. "I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Everything, I know it all now. Alice, she lied to me. I'm sorry, Mr. Britton," Maura interrupted him, her voice very soft, yet carrying an undeniable firmness. "I've forgotten about the past. There's nothing left for us to talk about. I haven't forgotten. I regret it every single day. Aaron's eyes were red. I was blind. I was an idiot. You can punish me however you want. Just give me a chance to make it up to you. Make it up? Maura looked at him quietly, as if she'd heard something absurd. Make up for what? For when I lay in the hospital, signing my own papers. For when I was thrown into the river and almost drowned. She shook her head, a faint, ironic curve even touching her lips. No need. I'm doing very well now. Your compensation, I don't need it in the slightest. Maura, and she glanced behind him. Mr. Britton, your new girlfriend seems to be getting impatient. Aaron whipped his head around. A sports car was parked on the street, its window rolled down. A young woman with bright makeup was looking over with an impatient expression. She was a model he'd met at a bar last month, brought along to pass the time and to prove he'd moved on. Now, that beautiful face seemed so glaring and cheap. He turned back, but Maura had already walked away. Her back was straight, her steps unhurried, and she never once looked back. Aaron ultimately couldn't make up for anything. He returned home, and life seemingly resumed its original course, even becoming more extravagant with his spending, his female companions changing constantly. But only he knew that a part of his heart was utterly empty. He could no longer find that sense of peace. Even the most lavish feasts tasted bland, and the most passionate, superficial encounters couldn't fill the void. Waking up at night, with different faces beside him, he would always vaguely recall that there was once someone who would quietly cook a bowl of soft, warm millet porridge when his stomach hurt, who would prepare warm water and a hangover remedy after he'd been drinking, and who would instinctively lean into his embrace during a thunderstorm. Those details he had once overlooked, considered as commonplace, now became dull blades relentlessly tormenting him. He began to suffer from insomnia, and his stomach condition worsened. Sometimes, driving past a flower shop, he would stop, looking at the fresh lilies in the window, remembering her saying, "Flowers of life." Sometimes, attending a gala, seeing a well-behaved partner by his side, he would lose himself in thought. He tried to find people similar to her gentle, quiet understanding. But the relationships never lasted long, quickly becoming tiresome. It wasn't that they weren't good. It was just that none of them were her. What he had lost was the unique Maura Thorne. The girl who accepted his love letter under the cherry tree at 16, the girl who waited for him to return from studying abroad, the wife whose entire world was once him. He had pushed her away with his own hands, and then, with those same hands, he had destroyed her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Maura's life unfolded in a dramatically different direction. She completed her studies, and with the encouragement of her mentor, began to try her hand at creating her own paintings. A year later, her small solo exhibition was held at a well-regarded independent gallery in Paris. The exhibition theme was rebirth. Maura, dressed in an elegant dress, smiled and conversed with visitors, calmly explaining her artistic concepts in French. Her eyes were bright, her expression confident. It was a radiance that truly belonged to her, emanating from within, no longer dependent on anyone. Later, she signed with a reputable art agency, and her work began to gain wider recognition and collection. She moved to a small town in the south of France, where the sunlight was abundant. She acquired a more spacious studio and planted many flowers in her courtyard. She was still alone, but her life was fulfilling and rich. She had a passionate career, true friends, and travel plans spanning the globe. Occasionally, she would remember the past. But those memories had faded like old photographs, leaving only blurred outlines, no longer stirring ripples in her heart. The pain was real, but so was the healing. She finally understood that leaving a toxic relationship wasn't a loss, but an opportunity to free her hands to embrace the life that truly belonged to her. As for Aaron Britton, he became a dark, forgotten footnote in the canvas of her life, a chapter long closed. Nothing more.